Welcome to the Bombshell Business Podcast, where driven fempreneurs learn how to become more bold, brave, and unwaveringly confident. Turn your dreams into actionable, marketable, and profitable plans and make your business irresistible.
Hey, Bombshell. Thanks again for tuning in yet again to the Bombshell Business Podcast. I am your host, Amber Hurdle. And today we're going to take a little shift in the theme of things. I've been teaching a lot with worksheets for you to use in your business, and I've been doing a lot of the business mastery side of things. If you go to amberhurdle.com, you will see my logo, and it says Amber Hurdle Coaching and Training. And my tagline / mission statement is empowerment and business mastery. Now, I spend a lot of time in the business mastery part because that is the real practical application of business theory that I think is often missed. I think people like to talk about what to do or theoretically what you should do, or maybe they learned something and then they regurgitated it in their learning platform, whether it's a podcast or the blog or whatever. And I want you to know how to apply it in your actual business. But at the same time, I know as a certified coach, as someone who has gotten her PhD through the School of Hard Knocks, I know that the empowerment side of things is equally as important, because if you don't have the right mindset, then you can't accomplish your business goals. If you don't believe that you can do something, how are you going to get your employees or an investor or your business partner or a customer to believe that you can do something? If you can't sell yourself on your abilities, how are you going to sell a prospect? So the empowerment piece is super important as well. And so I just want to tell you a little bit, actually a lot of it, about my own story. And I'm breaking this up into two different podcast episodes just because it's a lot. And honestly, I could do an entire season on it, which I won't do. But I'm titling this The Epic Lessons I Learned as a Teen Mom, Part 1. And really today I have one message, and I will let you know what that is at the end. So you have to stay to the very end to find out what that lesson is. But I'm going to pull out multiple lessons next episode to just let you know exactly what I had to learn very quickly in order to accelerate my success as a teen mom. So I gave you a little bit of hints about this in episode 00 when I was telling you about me. But I feel like today I'm speaking to those of you who have made bad decisions in your past. I am speaking to those of you who feel like maybe you never really recovered from something that you did in your history. I'm speaking to those of you who might have been hurt by somebody else. Maybe somebody really let you down. Maybe somebody abandoned you. Maybe somebody just broke your heart. I don't even know what that is, but I know that we have all been hurt by people, and that past comes to haunt us as we are trying to make decisions about their future. I mean, and I say this because this is genuinely what it is, and you know, I've promised you to always shoot you straight, but a lot of you have daddy issues. A lot of you have mommy issues. A lot of you are still stung by the first man who ever broke your heart. And I'm not judging at all on that. I'm just calling it for what it is. And I want you to understand that no matter what's happened in your past, no matter who's let you down, no matter what type of shame you feel for the decisions that you've made previously, or maybe there are decisions that you're currently making that you don't want to make anymore, there's a future. And there is always the next step, and there is always, always, always hope. And I've had the privilege of having the hindsight of the plethora of poor decisions that I've made in my lifetime, and to be able to use those in a constructive way where I have been able to share that story or that moment or that decision and the results of that decision with somebody. I've literally had women in my office just really stuck, and we're talking about business and tactics and what we're going to do, and I just can sense with every bit of me that something deeper is happening. And so I will just point blank ask, what's really going on? What's really happening here? What's really holding you back? Where is this resistance coming from? And I have cried in my office with people who just are so burdened by yesterday that they just can't even begin to think about tomorrow. And I speak specifically to women in this podcast. I know that I have a gajillion men. Maybe not a gajillion. I just looked at my stats, but maybe not a gajillion. But I do have a lot of men who listen too. And part of coaching men, part of that privilege for me has been that dudes don't typically show their vulnerability to each other, so they are able to. I've kind of always been one of the guys, and they've been able to relate to me with a more masculine energy, but still be able to be vulnerable and talk about more of the emotional side of things, or their resistance, or maybe some of their limiting beliefs. So guys, I'm not leaving you out of this episode. Just know that, I'm making this podcast for women specifically, and that I'm going to tell you the story about a very womanly experience, and that's having a baby. So just to give you a little background, when I was in high school, my family moved from Orange County, California, to a rural community. And I say rural, I don't think of it that way anymore, but it was at the time. I mean, the way that I saw it, at least at that age, when I moved from California, when I moved from California, that if you have to pass cows on your way to school, that's rural. So that's why I'm qualifying it here. So I moved from Orange County to a very rural to me area of Middle Tennessee, and it was shell shocking. I mean, talk about a culture shock. And then to take it up a whole other level, just to go from everything being open 24/7 and lots of malls and shopping and stuff to do. And I mean, I can literally sit on my roof and watch the Disneyland fireworks during the summer, to a small city that was excited about its second McDonald's. So that was enough right there. But then the year previous to the year that I arrived, there was actually a race riot at the school. And so when I came from a private school where really there was lots of different types of people with lots of different types of backgrounds and ethnicities and cultures and experiences, and it was really a beautiful thing, and not everybody looked like each other, and it wasn't like black or white and Hispanic, or even black, white, and Hispanic. I mean, there was all different types of cultures represented. I had Vietnamese friends and Korean friends, and I had a friend from Guatemala, and I had a friend from Brazil, and I had a friend from India. And so it wasn't just one section of people. So then I moved to a city that had the school shut down because there was a race riot, and that did a number on me. I didn't understand that. And it was very overwhelming, along with just other things that I will save for my book. But we would be here all day if I just told the entire story. And so it was troubling. And the beautiful thing that came out of that race riot is that civic leaders, or really community leaders, just people like moms and dads, came together and said, this isn't good enough for our community. And they came together and brought those of us at the school who expressed leadership characteristics, if you will, because of course, when I moved here, I was like, well, if I'm going to be here, you may as well dive on in. So I got involved with all the different school clubs and extracurricular activities, and just dove in head first. And so I was asked to help start this group called All Races Together. So my leadership in that actually evolved into a little more attention, if you will. So again, this is like the prequel. This is like the Star Wars prequel. This is like the Amber Got Knocked Up at 16 prequel. So I'm just laying the foundation here. So because of my involvement, and because of how much I was involved specifically in All Races Together and students taking a right stand, I was nominated by someone in our district when Channel 4 News reached out and said, hey, who are the really great kids in your school district? So I was selected along with about, 9 or 10 other kids in the Middle Tennessee area, and we were the, quote, good kids. So all they were doing was basically highlighting just our involvement and, what does a good high school kid look like? That was it. That was legitimately the reason for them following us around. So again, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just laying this foundation on very gingerly. So they followed me around school. I had the news cameras following me around school. I think they followed me to a football game. They followed me to church, and or maybe I don't remember. It's all kind of fuzzy at this point, but they included me. Of course, we all went down to downtown Nashville, and we were in this flat. We were all being interviewed together, and it was really cool, and it was meaningful, and it was like, oh shucks, look, they picked me, and I was around these other really great kids. And then when they came to my school, I remember being in like this quad type area outside, and they were asking me a bunch of questions. So one of the questions they asked me had the word everyone in it. Now, my parents taught me that you don't use the words everyone, everything, always, never, no one. Those are very strong words. And unless you really mean genuinely that everyone, like every single person in the world believes this, or every single person in the world gets to do this thing, then don't use that word. Well, the interviewer said, so parents are really concerned, and they think that everyone in high school is having sex. Is that true? So with my little knowledge and my understanding of what it meant to say everyone, everything, all the time, those type of words, I said, no, not everyone's having sex. And that's the truth. I guarantee you not every single high schooler in all of the world in 1995 and 96 was having sex. I'm pretty sure. And so luckily for me, that was the little soundbite that they selected to tease this series that they did for 5 days at 6 and 10. So you would get home from school and be watching Channel 4, and then suddenly you would see, and check out all these great kids and these high schoolers who are doing great things tonight at 6 and 10. Cut to Amber going, no, not everybody's having sex, because of course at the time I was still a Valley girl because I just moved here from California, not too far from that time. And so just put that little snapshot in your brain real quick. Okay, so I'm involved in all these different groups, so much so that I'm on Channel 4 News. This is the soundbite that's going out every single day. And then I'm being featured at 6 and 10 for 5 days in a row. It was pretty epic. So then, I start not feeling so well in the morning. And I even would tell my mom, like, gosh, I've been getting a lot of headaches lately. Or, I don't think that grapefruit juice is sitting well with me. I kind of spit that up this morning. Now, none of that should be much cause for concern. I've had digestive issues, like hospitalized and everything, since I was a very, very small child. So it wasn't like a big thing. And then one day, my mom's friend brought her back a book that they borrowed, called What to Expect If You're Expecting. So if you've ever had a baby, I'm sure you've read this book. And so no clue. I did not pick up that book because I thought I might be pregnant. I mean, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I picked up that book because I was laying in the recliner and it was sitting on the table next to the recliner, and I'm just a reader. So I picked it up and started thumbing through it. So I get to that, how do you know if you're pregnant stage? So just reading along for giggles. My mom's sitting on the couch right next to me. And it's like, when your hormones shift, you get a lot of headaches and you start to feel queasy in the morning, and things that normally sit right with you don't sit right with you. And you tend to get achy and you're tired a lot. And it's saying all these things. And I was like, oh, snap, I'm pregnant. Like, I just knew, like, it listed every single weird thing that I'd been experiencing that I guess I just never put together because I was too busy being a high school student, doing all the wonderful things and being featured on Channel 4 News. I mean, I was too busy to notice the fact that I had all the symptoms of pregnancy. So my mom's sitting right there. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I do the pregnancy test. Of course, I was with the person who was the father. I was in a relationship, so I had somebody to kind of go through this with. But I mean, it was like pee on the stick, bam, 2 lines, no question, I was pregnant. I went to a clinic, bam, 2 lines, no question, I was pregnant. Now, obviously, there's all kinds of things that go through your mind when you're 16 years old and you find out that you're pregnant. And that can be from like, how's this going to work? How am I going to go to college? How am I going to pay for this kid? How do you do, I mean, I had a baby before I was even qualified to take like the SAT or the ACT. So like this is like serious stuff, right? And so you do think about, what would adoption look like and what would abortion look like, and should I hide this from my parents? And I mean, it's just such a series of emotions and questions and feelings go through. And I specifically, because it's my body, but I decided that the best thing, the right thing for me, and I'm not saying this in a way to undermine anybody else's decision who has been in this situation before, but for me, I decided that I was going to do this. And so in a nanosecond, I went from very involved, very much in leadership positions in my high school. I mean, I was even the youth group president. Okay, so let's just crystallize that real quick, to suddenly saying, okay, now I'm a mom. Like this is the shift. So it was pretty interesting to underutilize a word, finishing up high school, because that was over. It was kind of like a Christmas break. And then there was like this huge ice storm, which is very unusual for Middle Tennessee. It probably happens like once a decade or so. And so we were out of school for a very long time, before I had to go back and tell everybody what was going on. So, almost like a month, if I remember correctly, or that could be an exaggeration from a teenager's brain, who knows? But, of course I had to tell my parents. And so, another layer of foundation, just a few weeks before, my mom and I were watching Sally Jessy Raphael. Now, I know all you youngins won't know what that is, but back in the day before reality TV, we had afternoon talk shows, and she was one of the most popular ones. So, this particular episode, all the girls on the show were telling their moms that they were pregnant, because obviously national television is the best place to do that. Anyways, I just remember telling my mom, wow, I would never be able to look you in the face and tell you that I was pregnant. Oh my gosh, I don't know how they're doing that. And just being a teenager came out of my mouth just that way. And my mom looked at me and said, don't ever say that. Now, pause, time out. My mom was the strict one. My mom was the one that you feared. My mom is a loving woman. Being a mom has always been her number one priority and goal, even though she's a career woman and taught me so much in that area. But I mean, my mom was the strict one. So let's just say that before I finish saying what she said. But she told me, don't ever say that. There's nothing that you could ever do that would make me stop loving you. And I might not agree with the decision that you make, but I will always, always love you. And we will deal with whatever consequences of your decision come in light of what you do. And so she said it a little shorter and more eloquently than that. But I just remember thinking, okay, that's cool. Like what a solid mom. Like that's great. And I really had a moment there with my mom where I knew that no matter what, because I was an achiever, I was, I need straight A's. I need to do this. I need to do that. And so for my mom to take a moment just to say, hey, you know what, you can screw up really bad and I'm still going to be your mom. I'm still going to love you. And we're still going to figure out, and there's still a future no matter what decision you made. So a little foreshadowing there for the end of this particular podcast. So fast forward to the night where I finally got the gumption to tell my mom. I waited until my dad went to sleep because I am very much a daddy's girl, and I needed to focus on one thing at a time. And obviously my mom was the one that I felt like, once I got that situation figured out, then I would figure out how I was going to handle my dad. And so I just told her, I don't even remember the words that I used, but I just told her what was going on. And her, one sentence was, I'm disappointed in the decisions that you've made, but there is nothing negative or bad about a baby. And so, of course, I was sobbing. And then she said, we will figure it out. She had some questions, of course, and we had a little further discussion. And then she says, okay, we got to wake up your dad. And I was like, no, let's wait until the morning. This can totally wait, Mom. Like, we just let him sleep. It's late. Let's not do it right now. And she was like, no, this is totally unfair that I know and your dad doesn't know. We need to tell your dad. So I was like, oh my gosh, it was already so hard to tell my mom. And now you're going to make me tell my dad. So, and this all coming from the person who made that decision. So my dad comes out from a cold sleep. Anybody who knows my dad, like, when sheeps can't sleep, they come count my dad. Like, he can sleep anywhere standing up, swear. So he's out, and I tell him, and his first question was, are you going to finish school? Like, will you finish school? And I was like, yes, sir, certainly will. Yes, I'm going to. And then his thing was, finish school. We'll figure it out. Your education is your future and this baby's future. So that was kind of where he came from. So I want to put another time out and just say, I understand how privileged I am. Like, I understand that having supportive parents and having parents who loved me through all of this is something that not everybody gets. And I know people get kicked out of their homes, or maybe they get to live in their homes, but they're chastised. One thing I can say is neither of my parents ever in 20 years have ever said, well, if you wouldn't have gotten pregnant, or, well, we're not the ones who got pregnant, or, these are just the consequences of the decision of you having a baby when you're a teenager. Like, those words never came out. Like, once I was having a baby, like that, it just is what it is. And we moved on with what was, and made it whatever positive we could get out of that is where we were moving with it. So we haven't even made it to the good stuff yet. So we're going to just go ahead and fast forward through the terrible pregnancy. I didn't really understand at the time that I had multiple autoimmune issues. So pregnancy for people with autoimmune issues is not exactly fun. But we're just going to fast forward real quick to the day that Brittany was born. So this is the end of July. She came in the middle of the night. I literally just thought that the day finally came. Anybody who's been pregnant knows, okay, you're probably going to pee on yourself at some point because your uterus is just so heavy on your bladder. So I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, crap, I finally did it. I peed on myself. So, of course, because I was reading many more chapters of what to expect when you're expecting. So I get up, I get to the threshold of my door to go use the restroom, and there goes my water breaking. So guys, sorry, earmuffs, if you're listening in and this freaks you out, like, this is just part of being female. So, woke up, everybody, go to the hospital. My best friend at the time's mom was the nurse who was on, multiple nurses were on duty, but when she saw that it was me, she took me and told him. So he rides on his bike. Remember, we're in high school. No, he rode his brother's bike barefoot to the hospital so he could be the first person there. And middle of the night, it was pretty crazy. So 17 and a half hours labor later, I'm wanting more epidural. And they're like, well, if we give you any more, then you won't be able to feel to push. So I'm feeling a tremendous amount of pain. She had crowned, we were like, this is full throttle action. And suddenly my doctor says, uh-oh. And my mom's like, what's uh-oh? And she was like, uh-oh. I remember her saying it twice. And my mom looked at her and said, whatever's going on, you need to tell Amber. Amber does better knowing the situation than being uncertain. And good Lord, that is true to this day. And so she explained that my daughter had the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck twice. So essentially every time I was pushing, I was choking her. So they wheel me. I don't even hardly remember all of this, but they wheeled me into a surgical room, put something over my face, a mask over my face, and said, count backwards from 10. I remember 10. I don't remember 9. I was out. So all this is happening. They literally ripped me open, like slice and rip me open. I know this is graphic, but I want you to understand, 16 years old, I want you to understand the trauma of what's going on here. And when I woke up, I remember that they had brought me Brittany, and I had touched her hand for less than 3 minutes through a little hole in like the incubator type thing that they brought her to me in. And then they had to send her off in an angel mobile, which is, I don't even know if Vanderbilt University still has that, but it was basically like a station wagon of emergency vehicles for babies to get them to the NICU in Vanderbilt, which is about 30 miles west of me. So Vanderbilt University is like a trauma research hospital with a university there, if you're not familiar with Vanderbilt. And then come to find out, between me saying 10 and me barely getting to say hello, welcome to the world to my daughter, they took Brittany out of me. She was scored an APGAR 0, so on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the best, 0 being, I guess, basically dead or dead, she was a 0. And Dr. Jordan, who I will forever cherish, had carried her out of where they did the emergency C-section, was taking her, I guess, into a room to take care of her, revive her, or whatever. I don't know. I wasn't awake, but I had about 30 people in the waiting room praying and just being there between my church and my high school friends. And there was another church group that was there for somebody else. And so once I went into surgery, they were all on their knees praying and just had a lot of support there. And what I was told by multiple people is that when Dr. Jordan was like rushing her into the other room, that her little leg flopped out from underneath the receiving blanket, and it was, I quote, Smurf blue. And so everybody just assumed that he was taking her somewhere where I could say my final goodbyes once I woke up. So everybody thought this was the end. And meanwhile, I'm just off in la la land because I just got sliced open so that my child could have her first breath of life, which I often like to remind her when she is expecting more of me than I'm willing to give. So my mom passes out. Everybody is just, very distraught. And then turns out that she lost a lot of oxygen. She swallowed a lot of blood. There was, all kinds of things that went wrong, but they got her to Vanderbilt. And meanwhile, I was in the hospital for almost a full 3 days trying to recover from my own surgery. So I drove back and forth to go see her during visiting hours. The first time I ever held this baby, she had a IV stuck in her scalp because she was such a fighter and so feisty, which she still is, P.S. She would take the IV out of her arm or her leg or wherever they had taped it down. So they literally had to sedate her and then stick it in her head just so that she couldn't get to it. So the first time, so I have this traumatic experience, 17 and a half hours of labor, feel every bit of the labor. Then I have this emergency C-section. Then I don't get to see my kid for 3 days. Now, the very first time I hold my child, there is an IV stuck in her scalp. I don't even know how to explain where I was emotionally at this point. I'm a strong person. I was a strong person then, but this was such an overwhelming physically, mentally, emotionally. I mean, anybody who's had a C-section or any type of surgery, like that alone takes healing time. That alone takes mental energy. And just to have it was just an insane time. So the day that I got to bring her home, about 2 weeks later, the doctors all said, well, we want to give you a few warnings. She lost a lot of oxygen. She might be a little slow. Be patient with her development. She swallowed a lot of blood. She had a blood transfusion, so she's going to have regular HIV tests until she's 7 years old. I mean, so just taking all this in, I'm like, I'm a kid. Now you're going to give me a kid that I've got to go get HIV tests all the time for? Like, what? But then at the same time, I'm like, my kid's a fighter. Like, she's going to be fine. And P.S., she was like top 10% of her high school class. I mean, quick learner. She started talking very early, walked, crawled, all that stuff before, those things typically happen for a kid. So none of that ended up being true. But when you're 16 years old and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. Then I get her home, and I had been pumping and sending breast milk to Vanderbilt Hospital so that she could have my Lochium and all the good stuff that you get in the first couple weeks of breastfeeding. And so I got her home, and I was like, yeah, I actually can, breastfeed, and she's going to be healthy. And well, she had reflux. So every time I fed her, she projectile vomited all over me. And because she had to feed so much because she couldn't keep anything down, even though I was supplementing with formula, which she also spit up all over the place, I developed mastectitis. So now I couldn't even nurse my own child because I was so raw and terrible. Meanwhile, if we can just imagine, she was born at the end of July. She was in the hospital for 2 weeks. We get home. I'm trying to nurse her, and school's right around the corner. School's the beginning of September, or at least in Middle Tennessee, it was. I know it starts a little bit later out west where I went to school originally. But in addition to all of that, she didn't really sleep all that great because she was in the hospital for the first 2 weeks of her life, being poked and prodded and gotten up every couple hours to evaluate, what color her poop is. And I mean, all that good stuff that they do with babies, and especially babies who have a lot of issues like Brittany did with her lungs and everything else. So this whole time I'm trying to process becoming a mother, process the fact that my baby almost died, process that I didn't get to, that everybody else in the universe got to hold my child before I ever got to hold her. Well, the first time I hold her, she had, stuff coming all out of her and electrodes and all kinds of weirdness. And then I get her home and I can't even feed her the way that I want to feed her. And on top of that, I have no sleep. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to start my senior year. So as you can imagine, this is a pretty crazy experience for me. And honestly, if I was just being brutally honest, this was not the worst experience of my life. So I'm sharing this story with you because this is my story to share. And because I know that Brittany's okay with me sharing it also, but mostly because I want you to know that whatever you see in my life right now, when you see that I have this amazing marriage and, a beautiful home and a happy business, and I get to work with the people that I want to work with, and I have great kids and all these wonderful things. And I'm not saying that to be like, look at me, I've got a great life, pat myself on the back, you guys should want to be just like me. That's not what I mean at all. I'm just saying I have an abundant life right now, and I understand that. But it didn't come without a lot of pain, and it didn't come without a lot of determination. And so I just want you to know that no matter what you've experienced in life, no matter what kind of trauma you've been through, no matter what bad decisions that you've made, there is one thing that you can do. And that is what my mom taught me the night that I told her that I was going to have a baby when I was still a baby. And that is, accept whatever is going on. And I'm not saying accept it as in this is going to be okay for forever. If you're in a bad situation, obviously you want to get out of that bad situation. But the reality is you also don't want to stick your head in the sand and pretend like it's not happening. So get clear on where here is, what's really going on. Now, no matter if you made a bad decision or somebody hurt you, no matter what the situation, decide how you're going to use that and how you're going to move forward past it in the most positive way possible. Lots of bad things happened after this, and I'm going to get into just the struggles of being a teen mom and what I learned from that very specifically. I'm not going to have a worksheet this time, but I want you to do 2 things. Get out a piece of paper. So 3 things. Step 1, get out a piece of paper. The first thing that I want you to do is write down the one thing that has happened in your life that still holds you back from your own greatness. If it was a decision that you made, if it was a series of decisions that you made, if it's a repeat type of behavior that you have, whether that's alcohol, whether that's, maybe that you have shared yourself with more people than what you think. And I can rant a whole other podcast episode against how women are held to a different standard than men. If somebody's hurt you, if your dad told you would never be good enough, if your mom made you feel less than who you are or tried to live vicariously through you, whatever that is, whether it's a little thing or a big thing, I want you to write that down. I want you to acknowledge it. This is the thing that is keeping me stuck that happened in my past. This is what's keeping me from stepping out and really shining and doing my thing and actually helping other people with my gifts and talents in a professional setting. The second thing that I want you to do is list the 5 good things that came out of that situation, because I don't care what it is, no matter how terrible the situation is, good things can come from that. Now, that is a biblical promise, and I know that I know that not everybody who listens is a Christian, but no matter what your belief system, I'm pretty sure that there's some kind of parable or something that talks about the good that can come out of the bad if you choose to allow the good to come out of the bad, if you choose to believe that. So step one, write down that thing that's holding you back, whatever it is, the negative past experience that is holding you back from your best future. And then I want you to write down the 5 positive things that came out of that situation. Now, to be clear, I made a bad decision in having sex before I was ready, obviously, doing things that I shouldn't be doing at that age. But after that decision, everything was great with Brittany. She is light of my life. I'm so proud of her. I could do an entire episode on how amazing this now woman is because she's 20. I mean, how much does that freak me out? But everything after that was beautiful with Brittany. And that's not to say that life wasn't hard, because, oh my gosh, it was. And I mean, Brittany can tell you that too, how much she had to stand by me and how we had to soldier through life for the longest time just to make it, let alone be successful. But that was the pivoting factor when my mom said that. And so I'm going to take my mom's challenge to me, and I am going to challenge you in the same way. Okay, so tune in next week. We are going to talk a little bit more about my experience as a teen mom with some more specific takeaways. I just felt like really telling the baseline of the story, it was important to me today. Absolutely, if you get value from this podcast, please go over to iTunes and rate and review it. You just click on the 5 stars if you think it's worthy of 5 stars, and then type in why you think it's a great podcast to listen to, so other women just like you can come and find that empowerment and business mastery too. And I really want you to take this episode and next episode to heart so that you can become a bold, brave, and unwaveringly confident fempreneur. And that doesn't just happen because of your keen business sense. That happens because you believe in yourself and you don't let life hold you back. So thank you so much for listening. I will see you on the next episode where we dive deeper into this topic. And until then, shoot me an email, amber@amberhurdle.com, or comment on this episode, and I will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Bombshell Business Podcast. Visit amberhurdle.com for more resources and be sure to tune in again. Cheers to you, Bombshell.